Alright, welcome to learning how to do a cityscape perspective. We're going to do a 1-point perspective. The first thing we need to do is work on our horizon line. Horizon line is roughly around the center of the paper. Sometimes you can go above it, sometimes you can go below it. The next thing we want to do is create a vanishing point. I like to label my vanishing point just so I can remember. Alright, step number 2 is very simple. We go from our vanishing point to the corners of our paper, and we'll create an X-like type shape. And it's really important to go from the vanishing point to your corners, because sometimes your horizon line's not exactly center. Sometimes you don't want it to be center, so it'll really skew everything. Alright, next we want to work inside of these triangles right here, and we want to build our building walls. And a lot of times it's good sometimes to limit yourself with the sides. So I'm going to do 6 over here and 7 over here, and that's the amount of lines I'm actually going to do. So a lot of times I'm going to start with the edge of the paper, because a lot of times we think our ruler is straight, but it's actually not. So we kind of want to line up our ruler, and then we want to slide it over. So it's 1. And you'll notice the closer I get to my vanishing point, the more 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll do one more over here. The more my lines are closer together, there is a little bit of an exception, but not that big of a deal, and I'll explain that to you. But your lines are closer together and a lot smaller. And then another thing I really like to do, and you guys can see here, there's a space here and then there's a space here, and it's a lot bigger on this side than it is on this side. And the reason why it's bigger is simply because I like to give a variation on the sides. Alright, next thing you want to do is you want to kind of measure out a space down here to do our sidewalks. I'm going to roughly do about an inch. It doesn't matter how big you do it, it kind of depends on the size of your paper. But you definitely want to measure it out, because we are having 2 sidewalks instead of 1 that wraps around the buildings like we have in our 2-point perspective. And sidewalks, when dealing with architecture, are specific size out, and they're all the same exact size. So we want to at least make sure, erase that, we don't need to go over the line, at least make sure the spacing is proper. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do just the tiniest bit of a gap. If you do this correctly, when you draw your line, you can see here, basically just runs into your sidewalk line. That's really kind of what you want to happen. This is to create the depth or the drop off of the sidewalk. This is the thing we always fall off of in reality. I fall off the sidewalk all the time, it's ridiculous. Okay, next thing. Now we have got the basic foundations, and you can kind of see here, I can go from my vanishing point and I can do just teeny tiny lines. The closer it is to the vanishing point, the smaller the lines are going to get. The further away, the closer to the edge of your paper, the bigger the lines are going to get. So that kind of gives you a nice viewpoint of what you're actually doing. You're actually going down the road, we're going to have sidewalks, we're going to have buildings, and it kind of helps us start to see the reality of what we're drawing. Okay, next thing you do is you need the gaps in your sidewalks. So I started my horizon line, and I just slide it down until I come to the edge. See, there's an edge right there. And I know you can't really see that close to the center, but you still want to do it, mainly for practice more than anything else. What you're doing is you're just doing parallel lines. See, I kind of went off it a little bit. Parallel lines to your horizon line, and you're just drawing the little dips in the See it. Go back up there and fix that one. For some reason I went like way crazy. Alright. This is just the little breaks in the sidewalk. A lot of times if you don't complete your line, like I did in there, make sure it goes all the way down, it can get really confusing. So, just want to go back and fix it. That's why all these teeny tiny bits of lines that we do are so important. Alright. And this flattens out everything. This allows the city to look like it's sitting on solid ground. A lot of times, I'm going to take this last one and show you, a lot of times people just kind of go from the sidewalk down straight to the ground. Like that, which kind of gives like a slope effect, like it's almost like a ramp going up to the buildings, and that will really destroy your illusion. If it's parallel, remember your horizon line is where the earth meets the sky. So if our earth is flat and it meets the sky right there, then we gotta assume that we're actually drawing on the ground when we do it like that. Alright? The next thing you want to do is, I always kind of mark 3 buildings to start off with. These are buildings that we're going to make taller. The first thing you need to do is you want to go perpendicular to your horizontal line. Just going to kind of follow that line, bring it up, and you want to do each line opposite of the star. So those are my 2 lines opposite of the star that I created, right? And I want to take, of those 2 lines, I want to take the line furthest away from my vanishing point. So that's this line. And that's really where I'm going to find the height of my building. So if the height of my building, we'll say it's right here. I went a little crazy. Say the height of my building's right there. I'm going to connect it to the vanishing point. I'm going to create my orthogonal line. I'm going to erase what I don't need. Okay. So now, because I've connected it there, that gives you the height of this line. Erase that line. Then to get to the side of my building, again, I'm going to go from my horizon line. And it's important to go from the horizon line. Slide this down a little bit so you guys can see. To go from the horizon line and slide it up to the corner of that building. And then you just draw a straight line until you hit your next building, until you go off the paper. Then I'm going to, just so I don't get confused, erase the original height of my building. So now I've got a taller building than the one surrounding it, correct? Go ahead and do this, same for the other side. That's the beauty of one-point perspective. Okay, I'm going to pick the one furthest from the vanishing point. I'm going to connect it to the vanishing point. Now, the closer to the vanishing point you get, the more angled your object will be. So connect those together. So now I've got the face of my building. I'm going to erase the rest of my line that I don't need there. I'm going to go ahead and erase the original top of my building. I'm going to go from my horizon line up till the corner of my building. Bring it all the way over until I hit another building. Now, the closer to the vanishing point I get, the wider the sides of my buildings are going to look. So logically, if I wanted to, I would come in here and maybe create a straight line from that first angle that we created to the top of my building, just to kind of make it shorter in depth. Alright, that's still a pretty deep building for being that far away. Try to avoid bringing your lines all the way to another line that already exists. If I went in here and created my building at the exact same width as that, it would have given the illusion that this entire section went together. So I always want to try to avoid making it hit the corner of another building. A lot of people make that mistake and they get really confused. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to just start building. I like to try to build up all my buildings. And that's a good starting point for creating your first part of your perspective.